Hi everyone, in this video we will cover how to run Azure Data Factory pipelines or signups pipelines with parameters using Python. We will discuss two approaches, one very standard REST API versus Azure SDK. High level flow of the demo will be first we will be setting up the app registration, which is the permission setup basically, and then both the implementations REST API and Azure SDK, and then we'll touch upon which one should you use in your specific situations. Now in Azure Data Factory instance, I have a pipeline which has a parameter as well, a string parameter with default value dev. This is not doing much, but it is enough for our demo, and we will be calling this pipeline from Python, and we will try to set this parameter with different values. Next thing is the app registration. App registration is basically a set of credentials that you give a third party application to be able to authenticate to our Azure Data Factory and run this pipeline. We define specific permissions for that set of credentials or app as we call it within Azure environment. So app registration sits within Microsoft Entra ID. Go to this and app registrations here. There is no app registered. Let's create a new app, give it any name. For example, I'm saying run ADF pipelines externally. So this is the app name, and all we need to do is register for now. Now this is an identity created, sort of a name given to an app. Now we will give a username and password to this. So username is done. Password is just give any to run ADF pipelines. This is fine, doesn't matter. Add, and you copy this secret value somewhere. I am gonna keep it here. Now we need to provide this app the permissions on our data factory, which is our ADF dev UK South, blah blah. Let's go to data factories, go to this one and access control, and you could use add role assignment and search for data factory contributor role. Next, and then let's choose our app that we registered just now. So which will be here in select members. So you see run ADF pipelines. This is the app, and then we have selected this. Now before I do review and assign, just want to touch upon manage identity and service principal in general. So manage identity also uh, we could choose if this program was to be executed from an application which sits within Azure environment. So you could use the manage identity of that application and then give the data factory contributor rights, for example, to that manage identity itself, and then you should be done. But when we're talking about any external system which is outside of Azure ecosystem, then you need the app registration, have the credentials set up, and the specific permissions the way we are doing it. So let's do review and assign. She's good. And it is done. The next thing we need is from our app registration, we need a couple of other things as well, which should be our client ID and tenant ID. So this is our client ID, and this is our tenant ID. Tenant ID is same across the whole tenant, but let's copy it anyway. So these three things we will need in our Python program to authenticate and then run this Azure Data Factory pipeline. Now let's go to our Python environment. So I have set up a blank folder here on purpose so that we could do this together. And let's create a new folder, run ADF Pipelines demo. Okay. And within this folder, we will create two files. One run ADF REST API.py and another one run ADF Azure SDK.py. Okay, and we will do the coding using Codex. I will not be doing any coding myself. So, and but before we go there, let's set up our Python virtual environment in this folder. Let's open the terminal. Let me close this for now. And we are in my demos. Okay, so within the project folder, which is our run ADF something, and in this one, Python m venv dot venv. Yes, we want to set this one up as our interpreter now. Yeah, so the environment is created. Now let's activate this scripts activate dot ps1. Yeah, so our virtual environment is activated. Now clear this, and we will need one more file. Yes, one more file which should be our .env file, which is to store our environment variables, which are essentially these three. But we will let Codex create proper environment variable names and stuff, and then we will assign these values there. Okay, so all done for now, and let's just use Codex now. Okay, now let's confirm access to project folder, run ADF pipelines demo. So yes, this is accessible. Now let's give the prompt to create a Python program. Create Python program in run ADF Azure SDK, or let's start with REST API. REST API.py file to run Azure Data Factory pipeline using REST API method. Use .env file to store variables like name of data factory, name of pipeline, app registration details. Okay, so created a REST-based ADF runner. This added the environment variables, etc. Two files changed, which is fine. This this is the code that Codex has written. Okay, tenant ID, client secret, subscription ID, the source group, factory name, pipeline name. Yes. So of course we will be defining all of this in our env file here. In this one, my tenant ID. Now let's start filling up this. So tenant ID, client ID, client secret, and my subscription ID. This is my subscription ID. Then my resource group name. Resource group for my data factory is this, and our data factory name is ADF dev, this one, and my pipeline name is pipeline parameter testing API ADF pipeline parameters. Now Codex has actually added a parameter as well within this environment file, which is not something I want. I want us to be able to provide the environment variable at runtime. So let's remove this and let's ask Codex to make changes to accept parameter name and parameter value from command line. Okay, so this is the command that we will run to execute this program. Let's see if it works. So, uh-oh, okay, it automatically ran, which is not what I wanted actually. Okay, parameter name. Our parameter name is param pipeline. Okay, param pipeline, and then value, let's say external. Okay, good. So this doesn't work. Now let's see why it doesn't work. Module name not found request. Okay, fine. Ah, I see. Okay. So pip install requests. Fine. Let's try now. Pip install .env. So both these should be fine now. Let's try this again. External. Pipeline triggered successfully. Run ID is this. Now let's see what is going on here. Yeah, so this actually ran just now, and let's see what parameter. Okay, so this is still my own default value here. If you remember, in the pipeline it is dev. The one that we sent hasn't really worked. Now let's see what has Codex written once, and then we will see where might be the issue. The problem here is that the parameter that we passed from Python hasn't reached here, although the pipeline ran successfully. So half of what we want is done, but not with the parameters. Now let's see. So this is the default REST call approach, or the URL that it creates, which looks fine. So essentially the logic is it authenticates itself using OAuth 2, meaning it retrieves a bearer token for the call and then passes that bearer token to authenticate to ADF and sends its own parameters. So authentication works fine and the pipeline runs. So let's look at where the pipeline run is written and see if the parameter is passed properly. get access token, which is fine. It's working fine. Request body, build request body. Okay. Where it is being used is this fine. So run pipeline, yes. Dictionary, access token, subscription. Okay, header. And then we are saying JSON is equal to build request body. So this is where we are passing the parameters. Okay, let's look at the build request. So it accepts the arguments and returns a dictionary. Both this is return this. Okay, so return. Okay, so it is basically creating a body with parameters, then colon, then the set. I am not sure if this is what it needs. Okay, let's try something. I think this is not the way it should be sending the parameters. Let's ask Codex. Pipeline executed fine, but did not accept the value of parameter sent from command line. Let's see what Codex does. It is focusing on the format of how the data is being passed, but I don't think that is the issue. Let's see what changes it has done. Put JSON parser this. I see. So it is just updating how it is parsing the JSON value being accepted from command line. But I don't think this is the issue. I don't think. I mean, it is fine. It is a better uh, thing to do, but I don't think this is the issue. We can still try it once. Clear this once and then run this again. Yep, this is here. Still dev, still the same issue. Now let's ask him that this is probably the issue. I don't think it needs to send like this, like parameters and then the body. I think the body needs to be without the word parameter. So let's ask him. No, that is not the issue. The issue seems to be the body of parameters being passed. Try it without the word parameters. Yeah, I think this should be fine now. Let me clear this again and run this. Run ID this. Let's try again. Where did that go? Okay. Yep. So yes, I think that was the problem. The body format was wrong. Now it is accepting our parameter, which is fine. So this is how we run using REST API. Now write a Python program in run ADF Azure SDK.py file using Azure SDK libraries to run ADF pipelines with parameter. Use the same .env file and app registration for this. So this has now written the code that we want mostly. Yeah. So this is the way we would run this. But before that, we need to install um, Azure Identity and Azure Management Data Factory. Python.env was already installed, so it is fine, but let's do that anyway. We've installed this. Okay, so this is done. This should go away. And now, yes. So let's now run the command again. So this is the command that we will run, but let's update this before we do that. We don't want to send debug, it's fine. Our value should be external, let's say SDK, that this is a call from the SDK version, and parameter name was param pipeline. Param pipeline, Azure SDK, parameter name. Yes, I think we should be good. Yep, so this is run successfully, and this is the run ID. Let's see. Yeah, so another one appeared just now, and the parameter perfect. So this is external SDK. Now, this was easier when it came to the SDK. So the core difference between these two approaches is basically one, you do the low level stuff yourself. You create this, you authenticate yourself, get the bearer token, and then run this, uh, post command basically using your code. But this is more detailed but more error prone. SDK approach is something that I like personally. It is much cleaner. If you look at this two things, specifically Azure Identity and this one, these two actually take away the the low level detail of what's happening behind the scene. So you see, this is where it gets very interesting. So data factory management client, we're passing credentials to this. Let's look at credentials. So you see, so credential is an instance of client credential, client secret credential, where we're passing the three things and you get an instance of that. So internally, it is using the same approach, but it is still much cleaner for you to look at, to debug, to manage. And with this approach, we didn't really have to debug anything as such. There can be two reasons. One, that Codex had the context that we ran into the problem of the body, how we defined the body. But yeah, I think it learned from our first mistake. But this approach, I like this approach much better than the REST API one. So our demo is mostly done. I will create a repo on GitHub and make it public for you to access this code. I will put everything that we've used in that Git repo except my environment variables. You can, I will probably be hiding these, but you can use your own names and keep your own environment variable file using the same format. I'll keep the format there in on the Git repo as well. So I hope this will be useful to you, and thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you. Bye.